The Matt's animated series Velma is an objectively terrible show, complete with unfunny meta-humor, poorly written attempts to seem progressive, and a complete and total lack of respect for the characters the series is based on. So I guess the question remains, can we fix it?
My studio has high hopes for this remake.
Remake?
Hey there, party people. This is Kramer Cafe. I'm Kramer. Let's get started. So in the past nearly 60 years, there have been a total of 14 Scooby-Doo TV shows, countless animated films, and even a few live-action adaptations. Most of these productions have been good, some were absolutely amazing, and others were flat-out bad. Though there have never really been any that were downright unwatchable. Until this past year, that is, when the series that shall not be named came out. That series is Velma. Oh god, I named it! Velma is a series created by Charlie Grandy with Office alum Mindy Kaling as an executive producer and star of the series, who is frequently the one who gets the blame for the show's idiocy, despite her not even being involved with the writing process. Don't blame Mindy for the show being terrible. Blame her for all the other stuff she's done over the years instead. Okay, so a quick rundown of how this series of videos is going to work. Essentially, I'm going to first analyze the core concept of the show we're trying to fix, then we determine what its top problems are, we see how we can fix those problems, and finally, we use that information to come up with a new, much better show that shares the same concept while losing all the issues the original series had. All good? Let's get started. So the core concept of the Velma series is a pretty simple one. It's an adult animated series showcasing the origins of Mystery Incorporated while mainly focusing on the character of Velma. It's also a series that changes many things about the characters, such as race, sexual orientation, and so on, while still remaining true to their... I couldn't even say it! Which brings me to my next point, the problems. Perhaps the biggest issue everyone has with this series is that Mystery Incorporated is not really Mystery Incorporated. These characters are all so different from what the gang is really supposed to be that it's almost insulting. Velma's a colossal bitch, Shaggy isn't hungry or cowardly, Daphne's a straight-up psychopath, and Fred is, well...
Hello, friends. My name is Fred. What's yours?
Yeah, he's... that. The main way to fix this issue is to simply remain true to what made the characters so great in the first place and the reasons why people love them so much. We can keep the good things, such as the original takes on making the characters more diverse, but remove the things the writers of this show got wrong, which, in short, is just about everything. It's really just as easy as simply being a fan of the Scooby-Doo franchise and wanting to respect the integrity of the characters. The second biggest issue is we've got a Scooby gang, but no Scooby. The writers of this series felt that for this show to be an adult cartoon, Scooby shouldn't even show up because he's what makes Scooby-Doo a kid's show. That's essentially like saying you need to remove the SIM card from your phone because that's what makes it function properly. It just doesn't make sense. Even if the show is mainly supposed to focus on Velma, you still need Scooby-Doo in the mix for it to truly be a Scooby-Doo series. The easiest way to solve this problem is just to find a way to include Scooby-Doo some way, somehow in the series. And it's really not that hard to include everyone's favorite talking dog while still maintaining the adult nature of the show. Have him be a service dog, or a stray that the gang runs into. And if the fact that he can talk is part of the reason why he apparently doesn't fit in an adult series, have him be a science experiment or an occult ritual gone wrong to explain that. See? It's easy to make Scooby-Doo work in a series like this. All it takes is a little finagling, and essentially just copying what Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated already did. There's a reason why that show is the best Scooby-Doo series of all time by far. Let's do a quick rundown of the other major problems this series has, since I really want to get to the making of a better show as quickly as possible. There's the over-sexualization of underage characters. I mean, come on, the very first scene in the series is a barely censored shower fight between two naked 16-year-olds. That's just wrong. Then there's the copious amounts of unfunny meta-humor. The character arcs were way too rushed, such as Daphne and Velma's relationship, Shaggy and Velma's relationship, Fred and Velma's relationship. Jesus, what is it with this show and poorly written love stories? And finally, there's the poor takes on how to be progressive. Honestly, this show sometimes feels like it was written by a man who just bought a book on feminism and then didn't read the book.
The feminine mystique. No way! I love Mystique! Is this about whether Jennifer Lawrence is hotter than Rebecca Romaine? Oh, I'm excited to see how they settle that in under 400 pages.
Now on to the last and bestest part of the video, the making of a new, better series. So first of all, we want to keep the core concept the same, an adult animated series focusing mainly on Velma and the origins of Mystery Incorporated. We also want to keep some of the ideas for creating a more diverse cast in the series as well. Let's start with the main cast at large. First, we want to remain true to the original and, frankly better, concepts for the characters that make up Mystery Incorporated. Fred is a himbo who drinks his Respect Women juice daily and is an expert with machines. Shaggy is a coward with a bottomless stomach whose best friend is a talking dog who's just as cowardly and hungry as he is. Daphne is a down-to-earth rich girl who's incredibly danger-prone while still remaining a total badass in other regards. She's also got plenty of useful, if somewhat obscure, skills to bring to the table. And finally, Velma, of course, is a mystery-obsessed genius with a major sarcastic streak, while still not being a total mean girl like she was in the Velma series. Past versions of Velma's character have had her coded as Jewish in the case of Mystery Incorporated, Latina in the animated Screw movie, and Asian in some of the live-action films. Just because we're trying to make a better version of the already existing Velma series, let's keep her as the race they put her as in that show, which is someone of Indian descent. It's original, it's fresh, and if handled correctly, it can make for a very interesting take on the character. We're also going to make this version of Velma a lesbian because the recent takes on the character's sexual identity, such as Mystery Incorporated and Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, have both gotten wonderful reception, and the love stories told in those productions have been some of the most compelling across all of Scooby-Doo media. The rest of the gang are pretty easy to characterize. Shaggy and Daphne both grew up rich but still had very different lives. Shaggy came from a family that loved him deeply, but he had no real friends growing up and has learned to cope with being a loner. On the other hand, Daphne's parents were neglectful, if not downright emotionally abusive towards her, but she was okay, or so she claims, because she had a thriving social life, was incredibly popular growing up, and had at least one family member who treated her with respect and decency. Let's have that be one of her many older sisters, and just for funsies, let's have that sister be a villain of some sort later on in the series. It's always fun causing characters pain. As for Fred, he grew up in an average family, probably the oldest sibling in a rather small clan, no more than 2 or 3 children in the household total, but he was always seen as a weirdo due to his interest in traps, which borders on a bondage fetish. Now before you say anything about that, let me remind you of this scene from Mystery Incorporated.
Traps Illustrated? Freddy!
I read it for the articles.
Yeah, bet you feel pretty stupid now for not realizing it sooner. We're also going to change certain aspects about the characters, such as race, ethnicities, and sexual orientation, as that was one of the few things I actually enjoyed about the Velma series. For example, let's start small by making Fred canonically autistic. If you've seen Mystery Incorporated, you know why I went with this characterization. Then for Daphne, let's do one big change and make her character Muslim and of Middle Eastern descent. The main reason I decided on this characterization for Daphne is simple. I saw a piece of fan art and I liked it. Specifically, this piece by Anna Martin. It's definitely one of the most original takes on Daphne's design that I've ever seen, and has some very cool ways to incorporate the classic facets of Daphne's signature look in new and interesting ways. I've included a link to the artist's social media pages down below. I highly recommend following them. They do some pretty cool stuff. We're also going to make Daphne pansexual because I just feel like that characterization really fits her. It also seems like that was what the Velma series was attempting to do with her character, albeit poorly. Speaking of sexual orientation, let's make Shaggy asexual but heteroromantic. That way, Shaggy can still enjoy a romantic relationship with someone while still remaining an original take on the character. I'm not sure what race I would necessarily put Shaggy as for this series, so let's keep him white for now as a placeholder. For the setting, we're going to put this show at a university instead of a high school. That way, we can include some of the more adult elements Velma had to offer while remaining as unproblematic about them as possible. We'll say that Fred is majoring in engineering, Shaggy is currently undeclared, Daphne is majoring in journalism as a callback to her job as a reporter in previous incarnations of the character, and Velma is majoring in criminology. This version of Velma will have had a strong interest in mystery solving ever since she was a little kid and wants to be a detective or criminal profiler of some kind in the future. We're also going to have an overarching plot of some kind, just like in Mystery Incorporated. For this example, I refer you back to earlier in the video where I suggested making Scooby-Doo the result of some sort of occult ritual gone awry. We're going to make it so that there's a conspiracy of some kind going on at the school the main characters attend relating to cult activity. This cult will be something like out of an H.P. Lovecraft novel, a group of depraved people who worship an eldritch entity of some kind that's trapped beyond our dimension, which they want to bring back in order to cleanse the planet of the impure. I also imagine there being a running gag where the cult members are identified by their love of Kool-Aid, because come on, of course we have to include that in the cult storyline. We're going to make the story of this series similar to the classic hero's journey archetype. Velma discovers the presence of an evil cult at her school. She starts investigating alone. She eventually realizes she needs help and gets aid from the rest of the gang. Something bad happens, wherein Velma again decides to go it alone and solve the mystery once and for all by herself. She realizes her friends are what ultimately made her able to solve the mystery in the first place. Mystery Incorporated officially becomes a thing, and the cult's plan is foiled thanks to those meddling kids. The monsters that the gang encounters each season will be the disguises of the cult members or their victims as they try and accomplish their plan of bringing their deity they worship back into this world. One possible way they attempted to do this could be that they captured a stray dog and tried to transfer the soul of their god into the dog's body, but could only get a small fraction of it in there. It both explains why Scooby can talk and why he has such a big appetite, since he obviously needs a lot of food to satisfy his godly hunger. But then what does that make Shaggy? This also ties in with another important facet of Velma's character. She's a skeptic who doesn't believe in the supernatural. If she's investigating a cult that is deeply invested in the supernatural, then that could be an important step on her character arc to start believing in the impossible. One other important aspect of the show would be the characters' relationships with one another. We're going to say that the gang does not know each other when the series first begins. They simply share a few classes together and each slowly become victims of the villainous cult's activities at their school, eventually deciding to work together to stop them. We're probably going to get Fred and Daphne together eventually, followed by Velma and Daphne getting together, but neither relationship will last because they ultimately work better as friends. No one in the gang is going to date one another for very long, though there will be plenty of shipping moments between them all because duh. Velma will have an endgame love interest of some sort, fitting her particular taste though, i.e. a super smart bad girl a la Hot Dog Water and Coco Diablo. Seriously though, what is it with Velma and being attracted to villains? Of course that is normal for many people. Looking at you, Tumblr. In the pilot episode, we're going to say that the inciting incident for the series is Daphne's longtime boyfriend from high school gets murdered, but no one believes her when she says it was a monster that killed him. Velma takes on the case of solving the murder since the police have swept it under the rug due to them being influenced by the villainous cult. Fred, being the nice guy that he is, serves as a comfort point for Daphne while she's going through this tough time, while Shaggy becomes Velma's unwitting assistant in solving this case. Eventually, Velma solves the mystery, but the monster tries to attack and kill her, too. Shaggy, being the excellent monster bait that he is, distracts the monster so Velma can get away. Velma hides in the engineering lab where Fred is working late on a class project, and Daphne is there with him because she needs a friend. Velma then rallies the crew to build a makeshift trap for the monster, and successfully captures and unmasks him. Afterwards, we get a quick hint about the monster's true intentions for killing Daphne's boyfriend. And the final scene will be the cult using some blood collected from the boyfriend to begin the ritual to bring their god into this world by putting its soul in the body of a dog. The ritual almost works, but they only manage to get part of the god's soul in the dog. We close this episode out with Scooby saying his first line of the series as the cult decides to try and kill him so that they can start again. That line is, of course, "Ruh-roh!" Over the course of the first season, we're going to have a few different story threads going on. Velma is going to become a target of the cult as she starts slowly uncovering the secrets of their activities. This arc ends with her being kidnapped by them in the season finale, only to be rescued by the rest of the gang. Daphne is going to go down a rather dangerous path as she tries to take justice into her own hands to avenge her dead boyfriend by solving the mystery of the cult her own way with her own very particular set of skills. It's sort of an original take on the concept of danger-prone Daphne, but we're going to keep her mentally stable, unlike what they did with her in Velma. We're also going to give her and Fred a small romance arc, but since Daphne would still be grieving her dead boyfriend, she and Fred's romance will only be limited to slight mutual pining until Daphne is fully ready to move on. Shaggy's arc for this season, meanwhile, will be figuring out the secrets behind Scooby-Doo and his origins after Scooby runs into him after escaping the cult that was trying to kill him. Shaggy's other goal is to hide Scooby from the cult and from the faculty of the university, as dogs aren't allowed on campus. That plot point could definitely lead to some humorous moments, which the series needs, since at its core it's still meant to be Scooby-Doo. By the end of this season, the gang will at least be somewhat joined together in an alliance, but will not officially become Mystery Incorporated until much later. That's really all I've got for this series that I wanted to cover in this video. It's a pretty simple and bare bones concept at the moment, and definitely needs a little more fleshing out, but I didn't want to take up too much of your valuable time, so this is all I've got so far. I might come back to this idea for another video later on, if there's enough demand for it. For the most part though, I think we can definitely consider the Velma series fixed. Let me know what you thought about my take on a different version of the Velma series in the comments section below, and if you have your own ideas for an original Scooby-Doo series, please feel free to tell me about them in the comments, and your ideas might just appear in a future video of mine. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Kramer Cafe. I'm Kramer. See you soon.